On the day of the wedding, the groom ran away. I turned around and married his father instead. If I couldn't be the bride to him, then I would become his mother. When Steve returned and saw me still in his house, he thought I was stubbornly refusing to leave. He pulled out a pure white flower from behind him and bluntly declared that this was his true love, telling me not to harbor any delusions. I smiled faintly, then took the hand of the man beside me. Eldest son, daughter-in-law. Why don't you call me Mom and let me hear it? I am the eyes of the Smith Group. Today was supposed to be the day I married Mr. Jones, but the groom, who should have been standing at the altar, was nowhere to be found. You mean Steve ran away? My voice turned cold. That seems to be the case, the maid stammered, her hands trembling as she spoke. My parents were furious as well. The Smith and Jones families had been preparing for this wedding for months. Invitations had been sent to all the major aristocratic families in B City, and the media had been eagerly reporting on it. If Steve had any objections to the wedding, he could have raised them at any time. To run away on the very day of the wedding was a slap in the face to the Smith family. After comforting me, my parents hurried off to discuss a plan of action. As I huddled in a corner, contemplating how to proceed with the engagement banquet, I heard a commotion at the door. Instinctively, I looked up and saw a man in a black suit with a handsome face. This man was Stanley, the current head of the Jones family and Steve's supposed father. Despite being 35 years old, Stanley still looked like he was in his 20s. He rarely attended large events, and even I could count on one hand the number of times I had seen him. At the sight of this man, people from various families at the banquet rushed forward eagerly, hoping to get closer to him, looking at Stanley's handsome face. A crazy idea suddenly popped into my head, as Stanley politely declined each person's approach and walked toward me with large strides. I put on a polite smile and spoke, my voice laced with a hint of grievance. Uncle Jones, I am truly sorry for the inconvenience caused to you this time. I've already sent someone to catch Steve, and once he's caught, it's up to you to decide what to do with him. I will explain to everyone that the wedding will be delayed, and all the losses incurred will be borne by the Jones family. This is indeed a perfect solution, but I have a better choice, Stanley replied, his voice steady, though a touch of curiosity lingered in his eyes. Now, Uncle Jones, I've been engaged to the Jones family since I was a child. But the person I marry doesn't necessarily have to be Steve, right? The situation had changed so quickly that Stanley was momentarily taken aback. After realizing what I meant, his gaze became deeper. Of course. Then who do you want to choose? I flashed a sweet smile and, without hesitation, extended my hand toward him. Would you be willing to be my groom? Stanley is not Steve's biological father. Although he is his legal father, there have been rumors that Stanley is unable to have children, which is why he has remained unmarried to this day. When he was 25, he adopted a child from a distant relative. Steve, the fact that he couldn't have children was not a big deal to me. With today's medical advances, I believe it could be treated, and if it couldn't be cured, being childless didn't seem too bad either. Stanley looked at the bright smile on my face and raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Of course, I replied without hesitation. Compared to Steve, Stanley was more than twice as handsome. Even if things didn't work out, just looking at his handsome face every day would be enough to satisfy me. It was definitely better than being betrayed by that ugly Steve. Stanley studied me for a moment, his strong hands holding mine with a firmness that made my heart tremble. The main character of this wedding had now changed. Without even needing to change clothes, the elegant white wedding dress I wore, paired with Stanley's custom-tailored black suit, made us look like the bride and groom we were meant to be. The guests attending the banquet were astute. Steve's sudden disappearance was no secret, and most of them already knew what had happened. The reporters had caught wind of the gossip and couldn't wait to raise their cameras toward the stage, eager to capture the drama between the two prominent families of B City. Seeing me walk up on stage with Stanley, many people were left dumbfounded. They were impressed by the audacity of directly replacing the groom. The MC, holding the freshly printed script, introduced the bride and groom with great professionalism. Now, the bride and groom will exchange rings. Stanley took out a ring and slipped it onto my finger. I did the same for him. But when I tried to put the ring on Stanley's finger, I realized it didn't fit. I looked apologetic. The ring had been sized for Steve, and there was no time to make a new one. Fortunately, we managed to make it work. Though it was a bit tight, after exchanging rings, it was time for the groom to kiss the bride. I couldn't help but feel nervous. Stanley's public persona was that of a reserved and self-disciplined man. He had attended only a few events, and never with a female companion. Would he be willing to do this? As I began to regret dragging Stanley into this impulsive decision, I suddenly felt a soft sensation on my lips. I couldn't believe it. I opened my eyes and found Stanley's flawless face just inches away. Seemingly aware of my astonishment, Stanley gently cupped the back of my head, deepening the kiss. I slowly closed my eyes, the applause of the guests filling my ears as they congratulated us. My parents were unaware of my sudden decision, but I could only smile and respond to the congratulations from those around me. I couldn't possibly embarrass them in public. During the toasting, my mom took my hand and led me into the house where my dad was waiting. She locked the door behind us. "Mary, what's going on? How did you suddenly end up with Stanley?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure how to explain the impulsive decision I had made. "Because he's good-looking," I said. Though I knew that wouldn't be enough, my mom paused, thinking about Stanley's face, and realized he was indeed quite handsome. "But he's more than 10 years older than you. He's almost finished with elementary school while you've just been born." I tried to brush it off. "So what? They say older men know how to take care of people." My mom still looked concerned. "But they say he's unable." I could see she wasn't fully convinced, and I racked my brains, trying to find a way to brush off her worries. Just then, someone knocked on the door. My mom opened it, and there stood Stanley. Unsure if he had just arrived or had been standing there for a while, my parents quickly put on polite smiles, as though they had never doubted him. "What can we do for you, Mr. Jones?" "I wanted to talk to Uncle and Aunt about something," Stanley said calmly, addressing my parents. In a short while, they no longer opposed the marriage proposal. Instead, they became very supportive of Stanley. "Stanley is good, capable, and resourceful," my dad acknowledged. "Even though he's a bit older, a man like him could protect his precious daughter. Someone like Steve, who ran away at the last minute, isn't worthy of her." After the wedding, I moved into the Jones family mansion. This was Stanley's home, and it was my first time seeing it. The interior was minimalist, with a black, white, and gray color scheme. After the busy social events of the day, I smelled of alcohol and sweat. Stanley went to freshen up first, while I sank onto the couch, taking a moment to rest. The sound of running water filled the air, and through the frosted glass of the bathroom, I could vaguely make out the silhouette inside. I felt a bit embarrassed and turned my gaze away, my face flushing. After a while, the water stopped, and instinctively, I looked up. Stanley emerged from the bathroom, wearing a bathrobe with the collar open, revealing his muscular chest and faintly defined abs. I was dumbfounded. I had never expected this man to have such an incredible physique. As I stared at him, a faint smile appeared at the corner of Stanley's mouth. "Mary, why don't you take a shower?" His deep, magnetic voice resonated in the room. Realizing I had been staring at him, I shyly retreated into the bathroom. I undressed and let the water cascade over me, Stanley's voice still echoing in my ears. Why hadn't I noticed earlier how attractive he is? After showering, I suddenly remembered that I hadn't brought my clothes. There was no other choice but to carefully open the bathroom door just a crack, revealing half of my face. "Stanley, I forgot to bring my clothes. Could you please hand me the bag on the couch? Just pass it to me through the door." There was no response for a moment, and I felt puzzled. Was Stanley gone? Just as I was about to ask again, I heard a reply, "All right." His beautiful voice carried a hint of huskiness. Then I heard footsteps and the sound of a bag being moved. Not long after, Stanley appeared in front of the bathroom. "Here you go." He placed the clothes into my hand as I cautiously opened the door, just enough to reveal my arm. "Thank you," I said as I closed the bathroom door, but in doing so, I accidentally locked eyes with Stanley, and his deep gaze seemed to burn with intensity, especially as he looked at the intimate lingerie in my hand. My face turned completely red. I had originally asked him to hand me the bag. After lingering in the bathroom for a while, I finally decided to step out. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Stepping into the room, Stanley was already in his pajamas, sitting on the bed, reading a document. As soon as he saw me, he closed the document. I noticed that he wasn't teasing me, and I felt relieved. Coincidentally, I had something important to ask him. "What are your plans regarding Steve?" Seemingly anticipating my question, Stanley handed me the document he had just been reading. "Take a look," he said. I walked over and received the document. Inside were the details of Steve's acquaintance with a girl, a classic trope of a wealthy young man and an innocent girl caught up in a tragic love story. There was even a photo of the innocent girl, capturing her purity. The two of them had gone through a series of tumultuous relationships, breaking up and making up without my knowledge, until last night when the innocent girl discovered that Steve was getting married. She cried and called Steve, and Steve, feeling remorse and regret, abandoned his soon-to-be bride and eloped with her. If I wasn't the bride myself, I might have genuinely wished them well, but, unfortunately, I was the unlucky bride. What had these two been doing all this time? According to the timestamps on the document, their tumultuous relationship lasted for 2 months, longer than the time it took to plan the wedding. Steve had even hinted at something. If I wasn't so angry, I might have understood better. "Steve has already taken his girlfriend abroad for a trip," Stanley said. "I've sent someone to bring him back. If you're willing, we can cancel our wedding." Stanley sensed my anger and thought I regretted it. His voice rang out, calm yet firm. "Well, we never officially registered, we just had a wedding ceremony. But why would I regret it? I threw away trash and found a treasure. This is just my luck. We're getting married, and once we're married, I'll be your wife. Let's go get registered tomorrow," I said seriously. Stanley saw the sincerity in my words and became equally serious. "You said before that I could handle Steve however I wanted, right?" I suddenly revealed a mischievous smile. "Suit yourself. Very well. I want you to freeze his cards, cut off his funds. Let's see how Steve enjoys his time abroad with his innocent little flower," I added, enjoying the thought of Steve being helpless. Stanley recognized my wickedness. But instead of stopping me, he added fuel to the fire. "Starting today, I will seize all the funds under his name. What do you think?" His sudden declaration caught me off guard, and my face involuntarily turned red. When I realized it, I quickly composed myself. "I think that's great. If it can make his life even more miserable, I'll be happier," I said, my voice steady but filled with satisfaction. After dealing with the scumbag, it was time for the next step. "Well, let's rest," Stanley suggested. As he seemed genuinely tired, he raised his hand to turn off the lights, and the room was enveloped in darkness. I lay stiffly on the bed, afraid to move. I wasn't very familiar with wedding customs yet. What was supposed to happen next? I lay there contemplating whether I should take the initiative, but before I could decide, I heard Stanley's voice again. "I won't touch you until you're willing," he said, causing a sigh of relief to escape my lips. But as I closed my eyes, I couldn't help but remember the rumors I'd heard. With such stunning beauty by his side, could Stanley really resist? Was it truly impossible? Just as I closed my eyes, Stanley opened his. I realized I had accidentally voiced my thoughts aloud. Quickly, I tried to play it off, pretending to be asleep. But before I could even count to 2, with my eyes still closed, I felt another body against mine. Long, slender fingers rested on my soft waist, and warm breath tickled my ear. "How about you try it yourself?" he whispered, his voice low and teasing. "It turns out you shouldn't provoke a man who has abstained for many years. The consequences are yours to bear." The next day, when I woke up, it was already late. The bed beside me was cold. Stanley wasn't there. Well, the CEO is very busy. After all, I felt my stomach growl with hunger. So I went downstairs to find something to eat. To my surprise, Stanley was sitting at the dining table, flipping through a magazine. "Did you rest well last night?" he asked, his eyes lifting from the magazine. Today, Stanley wasn't wearing a suit. Instead, he had on a simple white shirt with the collar slightly open, revealing faint traces underneath. Thinking about what had happened yesterday, my face turned red again, but I couldn't help but retort, I rested very well upon hearing this. Stanley's smile became even more playful. It seems like you were quite satisfied with last night. That puts my mind at ease, he said, teasing. Who's praising him? This old man really has thick skin. I can't compare, I muttered under my breath as I sat down at the dining table, feeling a bit embarrassed. Stanley smiled indulgently and went to the kitchen to bring over the warm food that had been kept aside. You won't be able to eat anything too greasy right after waking up, he said. The breakfast on the table was simple, a plate of steamed buns, 2 plates of side dishes, and a bowl of porridge. I was quite hungry and didn't mind the simplicity of it. I eagerly picked up a steamed bun and took a bite. My eyes instantly lit up. This is delicious. Who made it? Stanley smiled without saying a word. A thought flashed through my mind. Could it be that he made it himself? He lightly admitted, as long as it suits your taste. I wanted to say something sarcastic. But the taste was truly amazing. One mustn't ignore their conscience, after all. Seeing how happily I was eating, Stanley seemed satisfied. It wasn't in vain that he had studied cooking. After finishing our meal leisurely, the day was already getting late. I went upstairs to change my clothes. The decision to marry Stanley had come so suddenly, and I hadn't prepared for it in advance. There were no women's clothes in the villa, so I had to bring my own clothes from my parents' house. Stanley furrowed his eyebrows slightly and made a phone call. By the time he came back, I had already finished getting ready. Let's go, he said. Today, Stanley was wearing a white shirt paired with light-colored jeans, looking like a youthful college student. But as I blushed, I looked at the exposed collarbone under his shirt and the red marks below it. Are you really going out like this? I asked. Why can't I? Stanley was puzzled, but before he could react, I stepped forward and adjusted his collar. Then, I took hold of Stanley's arm, and we headed out. Stanley chuckled softly, his large hand holding my small hand. With the release of our wedding photos, Stanley and I were officially husband and wife, leaving our single lives behind. I still felt a bit unfamiliar with it all, but looking at the handsome groom and beautiful bride in the photos, I couldn't help but think, oh my, we really make a perfect match. I had such good taste. Steve went abroad with that little flirt. I froze his cards, and without any money, he'll be back within 2 days, hopping around like a fool. Now, I'm especially looking forward to his return, eager to see his reaction when he finds out that I've become his mother. Stanley is really thoughtful. After we got our marriage certificate and returned home, I saw that the once empty closet was now filled with various clothes and jewelry, all brand new and in season. Time was tight. So I didn't have time for custom-made things. Just make do with these for now, Stanley said. Although I already had many of these clothes, I kissed him to show my satisfaction with his thoughtfulness. As I expected, all of Steve's cards were frozen. He could hardly move a step abroad, as the young master of a conglomerate. He never carried cash. Luckily, he had that little flirt by his side, who, since being with Steve, had stopped working but still had some savings. If it weren't for her, Steve probably wouldn't be able to come back. The girl, whose real name was Lucy, gently comforted him. Don't worry, something might have happened, she said softly. Steve, still anxious, took a deep breath. Lucy, thank you, as she handed him the plane tickets she had bought with her savings. Steve felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He couldn't shake the faint suspicion nagging at him. His cards, which had no spending limit, had been frozen. And the bank wouldn't do that without a reason. Mary must have said something, he thought to himself. But the wedding was over now, and it was time to go home. Lucy had been by his side for so long, and they truly loved each other. It was time to give her the status she deserved. After all, she had given herself to him for the first time. Thinking about this, a smile of happiness appeared on Steve's face. Once they returned home, they would get married. And then he would take over the Jones family from Stanley. No one would be able to control him anymore. He could already picture his future. A life full of happiness and freedom. Unable to contain their excitement, the two of them hurriedly boarded a flight back home. After a 7-hour journey, they arrived at the luxurious mansion in the morning, precisely at 8:00. Knowing that Stanley usually didn't stay at the old residence, Steve headed straight to Stanley's villa. Meanwhile, I was lazily lounging on the couch, watching TV, and waiting for Stanley's breakfast. For the past few days, I had spent all my time with him. Before, Stanley had always seemed like someone who refrained from indulgence, but now I realized it was all an act, a way to enjoy some quiet, alone time together. Stanley had even given the staff at the villa a short break, except for Auntie, who came to clean every few days. As a result, Stanley took care of all the meals. I couldn't do much about it. After all, I'm not skilled in the kitchen. Fortunately, Stanley didn't mind. Every time he saw me eating happily, he would playfully poke me a couple of times. Just then, a mechanical voice came from the earpiece. "Master, someone is knocking at the door." I slipped on my slippers and checked the surveillance outside. When I saw Steve and Lucy, dusty from their journey, I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow. Quite fast, I thought, "Your eldest son is back." I walked into the kitchen, leaned against Stanley's back, and watched him fry the perfect sunny-side-up egg. "Amazing. Some people are just exceptional," I murmured. Stanley didn't even lift an eyelash. "Well, it's up to you to handle this," he said casually. "I've been waiting for you to say that." I left Steve and Lucy standing outside the door and took my time to change clothes upstairs. Only then did I open the door. The villa was huge, and the yard outside was spacious enough to be considered a small estate. Usually, guests would arrive by car, but since the drivers were on vacation, I couldn't be bothered to pick them up. They had to find their way inside on their own. After getting off the plane, Steve and Lucy hurriedly made their way toward the villa. Having skipped a meal, now, hungry and thirsty, they had to endure their discomfort, pretending to be calm while waiting at the entrance. After what seemed like an eternity, the gate finally opened, but they still had to walk in on foot. "Wow, this place is really big," Lucy remarked. Her eyes filled with envy and jealousy. "When we get married, I'll buy you a place just as big," Steve proudly declared, unable to hide his satisfaction at seeing his woman envious. "It must be very expensive." Lucy, ever the devoted one, replied sweetly, "It's not necessary. I don't care where we live, as long as I'm with you. I'm already happy." Her words displayed complete dependence on him, fully satisfying his ego. "What's the big deal? In the future, I'll buy you several villas so you can switch between them," Steve boasted, saying it so casually. But as they stood in front of the gate, he felt a wave of nervousness. Stanley, technically his father, had never been someone Steve paid much attention to when he was a child, but after witnessing Stanley's methods for handling disobedient people, Steve had learned to behave. As he grew older, he began to understand Stanley's ways more deeply, and that only made him feel even more uneasy. However, Stanley rarely concerned himself with household matters, which gave Steve the courage to be audacious and bold. He believed that Stanley, as the heir of the Jones family, couldn't possibly treat him the same way he treated others. With those thoughts in mind, Steve encouraged himself and tried to build up his confidence. "Dad," he called, pushing open the door, but instead of Stanley, an unexpected figure greeted him. I flashed a gentle smile at Steve. "Hello there," I said. Steve instinctively took a step back. What are you doing here?" he stammered. Behind him, Lucy, unable to dodge in time, accidentally stepped on something, causing tears to well up in her eyes from the pain. When Steve heard her voice, he quickly turned to look. "Are you okay?" he asked, his tone full of concern. "I'm fine as long as you're here," Lucy replied, gritting her teeth but speaking softly and gently. Steve spent a few moments comforting her before turning back to me. "I can't believe you're so malicious. What did I do to deserve this?" I stood there, calm and unmoving. "Don't accuse me of causing trouble. I was standing right here the whole time, not bothering anyone." Steve realized his accusation was unfounded and redirected his anger. "I can't believe you're so shameless. Our wedding didn't happen. So how dare you stay here? I don't like you. We have no future. This is my girlfriend, Lucy, and we're getting married soon." I was taken aback, puzzled. "What gave you that impression?" I asked, speechless. This kid hadn't even bothered to read the news from that day, yet he thought I would care. I went over all my interactions with Steve in my mind and was certain I hadn't done anything to provoke him. Steve must be brainless, I thought. "I know you and Steve were engaged before, but you haven't married yet, and Steve and I truly love each other. Please, Just let us be together." Lucy's words were dripping with emotion as her eyes welled up with tears, flowing uncontrollably, giving the impression that she had suffered a deep injustice. She cried so dramatically that it seemed almost staged, stirring Steve's emotions. He turned to me, heartbroken, and shouted, "Mary, you've gone too far. What does this have to do with me?" His frustration was palpable. I felt utterly confused. Was this madness? I sighed, trying to contain my irritation. "Is the mental hospital not enough for you? You're making a scene here," I muttered, my words tinged with sarcasm. It took a moment for Steve to respond. Still caught in his own tangled thoughts, "You're the crazy one," he retorted, eyeing my calm demeanor with disbelief. He seemed to think I didn't care for him, but he was mistaken. After all, we weren't at the Smith family home, we were at the Jones family residence. If it weren't for him, I wouldn't be here at all. Playing into his little drama, his tone softened slightly. "Marry someone else, if you've already moved on. We have no future together. Please apologize to Lucy. And maybe we can still be friends later. Who would want to be friends with you?" I shot back, my irritation growing. Being brainless is contagious. As I prepared to deliver another retort, a deep, magnetic voice interrupted the tense atmosphere. "What's going on?" We all turned in unison, our attention drawn to Stanley, who had entered the room, dressed in a custom-made black shirt that highlighted his perfect physique. He looked effortlessly handsome. His restrained yet commanding presence, paired with his long, slender fingers as he placed a bowl on the table, was nothing short of captivating. Lucy froze, her eyes widening. Steve, eager to shift the focus, immediately tried to engage Stanley. "Stanley, what is this?" But Stanley ignored him, waving at me instead. "Come over and have a meal," he said. I was standing next to Steve and Lucy, and they both thought Stanley was addressing them, but it was clear he was speaking to me. "Dad. You even made breakfast for us," Steve said, his voice filled with surprise. He was visibly moved, and he eagerly tried to pull Lucy towards the table. But before they could even take a step, Stanley stopped them. "No, just Mary." Steve looked confused, but Stanley, ever composed, extended his hand toward me with a smile. "My dear, come here." I quickly walked over to him, grasping his hand firmly, and turned to look at Steve and Lucy, both of whom were staring at us with wide eyes and open mouths. I flashed them a radiant smile before turning to Stanley. "Elder son, save Mom," I joked, teasing Steve and Lucy. The shock was palpable. They stood frozen for a moment, their jaws dropping in disbelief. Stanley, unfazed, sat down at the dining table, still holding my hand. "Let's eat before the food gets cold," he said, completely ignoring the two of them. Steve and Lucy stood there, motionless for a full 2 minutes before they finally snapped back to reality. Steve, still in disbelief, couldn't lower his voice as he exclaimed, "What? When did this happen? How is this possible?" The sudden shift in his demeanor from arrogance to utter shock was almost too satisfying. He had been so full of himself just moments ago, and now he stood there with his mouth agape. "Serves you right," I thought, feeling a twinge of satisfaction. As Steve tried to recover, he shot me a glance, frustration written all over his face. "Dad, how could you marry her?" he blurted out, unable to contain his anger. His eyes searched mine with malice, trying to find some hidden motive. "She must have done this on purpose." "Right, Dad, this is intentional. Besides, there's more than a 10-year age difference between you two. How can you be together?" I paused, letting his words linger before responding. "I admit, initially choosing Stanley was a bit of a revenge move," I confessed, "but that's only a small part of it. The larger reason is that, as a member of the Smith family, I can't let the Smith name be disgraced in front of so many people. We don't really value love in our world. It's all about status. I chose Stanley because of his standing, and frankly, he's far superior to you in every way: looks, physique, intelligence, everything. But the key thing is, he's willing to dote on me." Steve looked taken aback as I raised an eyebrow. I leaned in and kissed Stanley on the cheek, knowing it would drive Steve crazy. "Revenge at the cost of marriage. Are you really worthy of that?" I teased. I turned to Stanley, feeling playful. "Quick, elder son, call her Mom, or I'll make your dad get another son." I threatened, pointing at myself with a satisfied grin. Steve's frustration reached a boiling point, and he turned to Stanley, his voice demanding action. "Dad, aren't you going to do something about her?" he snapped, finally. Stanley looked up, giving Steve a knowing look. "How can I control her?" he said affectionately, ruffling my hair. "Besides, Mary married me, so you should call her Mom." Seeing that Stanley was clearly on my side, Steve's frustration only deepened. As the eldest son, he had never been subjected to such humiliation. In a huff, he turned and attempted to walk away, but just as he did, he felt a tug on his hand. It was Lucy, her face filled with grievances. "All right," Steve muttered through gritted teeth, "for the sake of a better future with Lucy, or Mom," he added, managing to squeeze out the words. I couldn't hold back any longer and burst out laughing, my joy evident. "Good eldest son," I laughed, unable to contain my amusement. Seeing Steve's face grow darker as I ignored his discomfort only made me laugh harder. Steve, still fuming, shot me a dirty look but then seemed to calm down, his pride hurt but not completely shattered. I approached him. Reaching into my pocket with a playful smile, "I specially prepared a red envelope for you," I said, handing it to him. Steve, reluctant as ever, didn't want to accept it, knowing full well that as the young master, he didn't need the money. Yet, Stanley's calm voice cut through the tension. "Take it. And don't throw it away." Grinding his teeth in frustration, Steve reluctantly took the red envelope, clearly upset. "Thank you, Mom," he muttered, unable to hide his resentment. "You're welcome," I replied sweetly, showing him a wide grin, feeling utterly pleased with myself. With that moment behind us, it was time to focus on the next challenge. Lucy. "So, this is my future daughter-in-law," I mused to myself, eyeing Lucy from head to toe, though I had seen her photos before. Seeing her in person gave me a completely different impression. She really wasn't anything special. "Steve, what kind of look is that?" While Lucy's small face was indeed quite attractive. With her fair skin and watery eyes, her figure was as flat as a washboard. Perhaps she was trying to maintain her image as a pitiful little white flower. She was still wearing a white dress today, making herself appear delicate and innocent, but the greed in her eyes, which she couldn't hide, made it clear that she was definitely not a simple person. Only Steve, this foolish narcissist, couldn't see through it and believed that Lucy truly loved him. "Hello, I'm Lucy," she hesitated, unable to bring herself to call the girl in front of her, who looked younger than she was. "Mom." "Oh, Lucy, not bad, not bad," Stanley said casually. He didn't mind and simply left a sentence before returning to the dining table to continue eating. Now it was Stanley's turn to play his part. Stanley immediately understood. He wiped his mouth, then asked, "What's the matter?" As soon as the wedding issue was mentioned, Steve, who had been trying to ignore the previous humiliation, immediately shifted his attention. "Dad, why is my card frozen? Why are the car and house under my name affected?" Steve said, still trying to process it. Thinking about it, he remembered how he had wanted to drive his own luxury car from the airport, but had ended up taking a taxi all the way instead. The smell in the car, left by whoever had been in it before, made his face turn green. "Why don't you?" Stanley's demeanor instantly changed, his tone turned stern. Exuding the power of someone in control, "You suddenly called off the wedding. Do you know what kind of impact that has on the Smith and Jones families? Can you bear the consequences?" Steve, terrified, wanted to kneel and beg for forgiveness, but thinking about Lucy by his side, he held back for the sake of his image. "I just don't like her." "What's wrong with wanting to be with the person I like?" Steve said, looking at Stanley with defiance. I smirked. "Don't make this sound so simple. It's true that you don't like me, but we've been together for a while now, and the wedding wasn't something we decided on overnight. If you didn't like me, you could have said so earlier." Running away from the wedding and trampling on the face of our Smith family the day before, it's unforgivable. Marrying me, the only daughter of the Smith family, means you have the support of the Smith family behind you, which solidifies your position as the heir. Otherwise, the Jones family has plenty of children, many of whom are capable and intelligent. What makes you worthy? After I finished speaking, Stanley turned to Steve. "Do you understand? Steve stumbled over his words, unable to find a defense for himself. In reality, he was just foolish. Having grown up with everything handed to him, no matter what mistakes he made, everyone overlooked them because he was the young master of the Jones family. This had led him to not consider the consequences of his actions, simply doing whatever he wanted. I know I was wrong, and I won't dare to do it again in the future, Steve said, his voice small. Do you even have a future? Stanley's icy gaze swept over him. Steve realized the weight of the question and responded, No, there is no future. You want to be with her? Stanley asked, his tone still cold. Steve, his determination rekindled, stood tall. Yes, Dad, I love her. I can't imagine a future without marrying her. I want to marry her. Steve immediately became spirited, expressing his true feelings. Uncle Jones, Steve and I genuinely love each other. I truly love him. Lucy also spoke up, her eyes shyly looking at Stanley. I smirked with disdain. As a woman, I naturally understood what that look meant. This little white flower wasn't as innocent as she seemed, but it wasn't my place to intervene. I wouldn't interrupt. Fine, but if you want to be with her, you have to give up your position as the heir of the Jones family, Stanley said, his voice calm yet authoritative. At the same time, everything I have given you will be taken back. I won't support a useless person, regardless of what kind of person Lucy is. The heir of the Jones family cannot marry an ordinary woman. Unless Steve has the same capabilities as I do and can protect his wife, then it's a different story. But Steve, in his early 20s, is still as naive as a teenager. Everything he has now has been given to him by me, by the Jones family. Steve's face twisted in disbelief. Dad, I only wanted to marry the woman I loved. Now I have to pay such a great price for it. Steve's decision stunned Lucy. This wasn't what she had expected. She had approached Steve initially, acting all sweet. To marry into the Jones family and live a life of luxury and abundance without worrying about money. If Steve really agreed to Stanley's terms, they would have nothing. No house, no car, no money. So why would she marry him? It would be better to let Steve stay in the Jones family, where she could control him and have as much money as she wanted. But before she could persuade him, Steve tightly held her hand and said, Lucy, don't worry, I will never let you down. In the next moment, he turned to Stanley and said, All right, I agree. From now on, I am no longer your son. I am no longer the heir of the Jones family. Can I have Lucy now? Lucy's heart acted, but she could only pretend to be moved. Steve, you don't have to go this far for me. You were originally the young master of the Jones family with a promising future. Lucy, you don't need to persuade me anymore, Steve replied, his voice resolute. I knew exactly what this decision meant. I promised to marry you. And I will. We are definitely getting married. Don't worry, I will make sure you have a good life. With all my heart. Steve's expression was one of deep affection as he sat at the table. I watched the two of them talk, unable to hide the smile on my face. Lucy must have been infuriated, speaking with such an idiot. Let her experience the same confusion she caused me earlier. Well, I won't keep you any longer. Go ahead, Stanley said, issuing an order for them to leave before Lucy could persuade Steve to reconsider. He had already made up his mind. Just like that, Steve, in all his arrogance, grabbed Lucy's hand and walked away. Once they were gone and the door was closed, I couldn't hold back my laughter any longer. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. Oh my, you're so happy, Stanley said helplessly, coming over to rub my stomach. I looked up at him, feeling proud and confident. Of course I'm happy. Just look at Steve's face, it was so dark. I grinned, then grabbed Stanley's hand and looked at him with sparkling eyes. Are you really going to kick Steve out after all these years of him calling you Dad? Can you really do that? It's not just him who wants to call me Dad, Stanley said, raising his hand to rub my head. He lacks understanding and has no sense of responsibility. How can he possibly bear the weight of the Jones family? That's right, he deserves to suffer. I nodded in agreement. The young master is used to living comfortably, never listening to any opposing opinions. How could he bear the responsibility of the Jones group? Stanley acted quickly. As soon as Steve agreed, he immediately called the Jones family and ordered them not to help Steve in any way. Anyone who violated this order would face consequences. Steve's parents were furious with their son. They had gone to great lengths to introduce him to Stanley as their son, but now, Steve couldn't even see through the intentions of a woman. If this woman had come from a respected background, they might have reluctantly accepted her, but unfortunately, she had a criminal record. When Steve called his parents to ask for money, they refused without hesitation. They wanted this brat to taste some hardship. Steve was left dumbfounded as his parents hung up on him. Lucy anxiously urged him, "Steve, what did they say? Did your parents agree?" "It's fine, I still have friends," Steve said stubbornly, as he called all his friends one by one. But in the end, he was only able to borrow a little over $10,000. It may sound like a decent amount, but he used to throw around much more than that. These fair-weather friends of his made him furious. He slammed his phone hard on the ground, shattering it into pieces. "Lucy, don't worry," he said, trying to comfort her. "I won't let you go back to those hard days. I'll find a job tomorrow. And I'll provide you with a comfortable life." Lucy remained silent, bowing her head. There was something flickering in her eyes. She wanted more than just a comfortable life. No matter how many setbacks Steve faced, I had already gone to Sonia for our honeymoon with Stanley. Sunshine Beach. Here I come, I thought, excited. Originally, I had bought 2 bikinis, planning to enjoy some fun at the beach. Stanley, however, noticed the 2 bikinis I was holding. They barely covered half of my body. He raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you sure you want to wear that? Is it not nice?" I asked, puzzled. I saw other people wearing them like this, and I carefully picked them out. I didn't notice anything off in his tone, and happily gestured with the bikini in my hand. "Why don't you try them on first?" I readily agreed. But when I actually put on one of the bikinis in the room, I felt a bit shy. It was a light purple bikini that made my skin look fairer, exuding a pure and elegant charm. I couldn't help but feel proud as I looked at myself in the mirror. I never thought I could pull off this look. Isn't this pure? It's simply innocent and pure. Stanley is really lucky. When I walked out of the room, as expected, Stanley couldn't take his eyes off me. He was reluctant to even blink. "How do I look? Do I look good?" I proudly twirled in front of him, feeling happy and confident. Just as I was about to open the door to go out, Stanley suddenly grabbed my arm with a strong pull. Pulling me into his embrace, Stanley had also changed into his swimwear, his chest and abs exposed. He suddenly pressed me against him, and I couldn't help but flush. "What are you doing? I think my wife looks incredibly beautiful like this, so it's better if we don't go out today. I don't want others to see you like this," he murmured, reaching out to brush the hair near my ear. His deep, magnetic voice made my heart race. "Well, what do you want to do?" I gave him a mischievous smile. Leaning close to his ear and whispering softly, "What do you think?" Stanley's gaze turned intense. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, looking at the marks on my body. "Stanley, you petty old man," I gritted my teeth, determined to make him sleep on the couch for 2 weeks. No, 2 months when we get back. I won't let him think he can bully me so easily. But after everything, I reluctantly gave up on the skimpy bikini and opted for more conservative clothes. I really didn't want to wake up to another day like this. If I kept sleeping for a few more days, we might as well end the honeymoon and head back home. The beach in Sonia, with its endless sea blending into the blue sky, was simply breathtaking. Stanley sat quietly on the sun lounger, watching me play. When it was time, he called me over to apply sunscreen, feed me fruits, and bring me juice. I lay there, flat on my back, mouth open, enjoying the moment. Life couldn't get any better than this. As for Steve, his situation was a far cry from mine. He had always been careless with money. Although he had borrowed over $100,000 from friends and had a little savings of his own, he could barely scrape together $200,000. But his reckless spending habits quickly drained that amount. Within less than a month, there was hardly anything left. Steve still hadn't found a stable job. Meanwhile, Lucy had managed to find work as a waitress, taking on the responsibility of providing for their little family. Lucy still held on to hope. Believing that the Jones family might be pretending to push her out, she continued to play the role of a dutiful girlfriend in front of Steve, trying to support him. Naturally, Steve was moved by her dedication and poured his heart out to her. He entrusted the last tens of thousands of yuan in his pocket to Lucy, and with her help, he found a job at a company. After all, Steve had graduated from a prestigious university, so finding a job wasn't difficult. However, Steve was used to being arrogant. Once he joined a small company, he was just another low-level employee. Anyone in the company could step on him, and how could he tolerate that? Within 3 days of joining, he got into a confrontation with his boss and ended up losing tens of thousands of yuan. Eventually, he was honorably dismissed. "Steve, you really need to control your temper," Lucy said, trying to hold back her frustration. "If you keep going like this, what will our future look like? After finally saving a few tens of thousands, you've thrown it all away in an instant." She had to suppress her anger, trying to counsel Steve patiently. "I don't want this either," Steve muttered, lowering his head like a child who had done something wrong. "Who does he think he is, bossing me around all day, telling me what to do, and calling me a coward?" After these days of hardship, Steve realized that once he wasn't the young master of the Jones family, no one cared about him. Only Lucy treated him the same way as before, and he couldn't afford to lose her. "Steve, I know it's not your fault," Lucy said softly, taking his hand and placing it on her belly, "but we have no money now. So the only option is to endure and wait." Her voice wavered with emotion. "We need to give our child a good life." Steve's eyes lit up at the mention of the baby. "Yes," he said, his voice full of determination, "we will give him a good life." Lucy, her voice choked with emotion, continued, "If we can't give him a good life, I'd rather not have this child." Steve's gaze became resolute. "I will do my utmost to give him the life he deserves." Although Steve was determined to make things work on his own, he still couldn't bring himself to ask his family for help. He had too much pride. He wanted to rely on himself, not others. A month later, when Stanley and I returned from our honeymoon, I was shocked to see Steve. Was this still the arrogant young master I once knew? His hair was messy, covered in dust, and his clothes were wrinkled and dirty. If you didn't know better, you might think he was a construction worker from some site. He was holding a box of milk and a box of pastries. "What's all this?" I asked, puzzled. Steve, aware that his appearance didn't quite match the grandeur of the mansion, scratched his head sheepishly. "Don't worry, I'm not here to ask for money," he said, trying to sound nonchalant. "What do you mean?" I furrowed my brows, not understanding. "I just wanted to come and thank you," Steve replied, placing the milk and pastries on the ground, probably worried that the dirt on him might soil anything. Standing a few steps away from me, he bowed deeply. I took a step back in surprise and didn't dare to accept the items. "Thank me? Thank me for what?" "Thank you and Stanley for kicking me out and letting me enjoy my life," Steve said with sincerity. "If it weren't for what you said to me, I might never have experienced the happiness I feel now." His smile was genuine, and for the first time in a long while, Steve looked truly happy. In the past month, he had been through so much. He had gone from living a comfortable life, adored by everyone, to facing the harsh reality of his new life with Lucy. With her pregnancy, Steve couldn't bear to let her go out to work again. Seeing the money in his hands running out, he gritted his teeth and found another job, working in a private company. However, he couldn't stand the arrogance of the management, and the wages as a server or dishwasher were far too low to support Lucy and their unborn child. So, Steve made a tough decision. He started working as a bricklayer on a construction site. Yes, he really went to work. On a construction site, Steve was earning 500 yuan a day, a sum that barely covered the price of a drink he used to enjoy, which once cost twice that amount. Yet now, he was working tirelessly for every penny. During this time, he learned how challenging life could be for the lower-level employees, something he had never truly understood before, although the work was exhausting and physically demanding. The money in his bank account brought him a sense of fulfillment. Coming home every day to a warm meal and Lucy's smiling face warmed his heart. This, he thought, was what it felt like to have a home. I could see the joy radiating from Steve, and I understood. I never expected Lucy to endure so much for this long. But then Steve dropped another bombshell. "I came here to tell you that Lucy is pregnant. We're having a child, and I will work hard to support them on my own." I was surprised. though I didn't show it. As long as you're happy, Stanley, and I wish you all the best, I replied, offering the response Steve had been waiting for. With a satisfied grin, he happily walked away. I watched his retreating figure and couldn't help but feel that he was acting like a fool, still wearing a big green hat. Back at the villa, I told Stanley about Lucy's pregnancy and how Steve had sent a box of milk and pastries, asking if he wanted to try them. Stanley, too, was a bit surprised. And he got up to make a phone call. 2 hours later, fresh information arrived. Stanley glanced at it briefly while I leaned over, eager to see the details. How is it? Is Lucy really carrying Steve's child? I asked. Take a look for yourself, Stanley replied, handing me the document. My curiosity deepened as I scanned the report from top to bottom. It detailed Steve's experiences over the past 2 months. No wonder he had said all those strange things earlier. It seemed he had truly gone through a lot, from being the beloved young master of the Jones family to now experiencing the harsh realities of human relationships. Not bad, Stanley remarked, seemingly impressed with Steve's progress. But as I read the next line, I raised an eyebrow. Steve's blissful expression now seemed to be hiding another blow. He is striving to provide for his wife and child, which is commendable, but unfortunately, his judgment isn't great. I thought. Wait a little longer. It should be soon, Stanley said as he took the document from my hands and affectionately ruffled my hair. You don't really care about Steve, do you? He teased playfully. I leaned against Stanley, smiling. The fact that the document was delivered so quickly made it clear Stanley had been monitoring Steve all along. No, Stanley replied, shaking his head with a grin. You just wanted to watch the show, so I had someone follow Steve and Lucy, ensuring you could witness the whole drama unfold. You're really something, I giggled, playfully biting Stanley's face, leaving a ring of teeth marks on his handsome features. Do you really have to bite me? Stanley chuckled, a mixture of helplessness and indulgence in his eyes. Why not? You belong to me completely, I said playfully. Stanley chuckled softly, his deep and magnetic voice resonating with affection. Of course, you can, it's my honor. However, my dear wife, I have to go to the company this afternoon. If you don't mind, you can take a few more bites. I had no choice but to jump off him quickly and grab a towel, not wanting to damage my elegant and sophisticated image. As Stanley had predicted, the reality unfolded swiftly. Within a month, Lucy sold the house and disappeared with all the money. Steve, who had been spending money recklessly, had handed over all the money he earned working at the construction site, over 10,000 yuan, to Lucy. He kept only a few hundred yuan for himself. Lucy's sudden disappearance caught Steve completely off guard. He hadn't noticed anything unusual, continuing to work as usual, but when he came home one day, he found another group of people living in the house. In his anxious inquiries, he learned that the previous owner had sold the house to them. Steve sat in despair on a street corner, still clutching the strawberries he had bought for Lucy along the way. Why? Steve couldn't understand. Everything had been fine before. Why had Lucy left? Did he do something wrong? With only a few hundred yuan in his hand, he couldn't even afford a place to stay for the night in this bustling city. Without a blanket or anything to keep him warm, Steve could only curl up on a park lounger, shivering in the chilly early winter night, unable to sleep due to the cold. His mind kept replaying the events of the past 6 months. Slowly, he began to realize that he had been deceived. A choked sound, somewhere between laughter and tears, escaped his throat. After enduring the night, Steve finally stood up at dawn, determined to make his way to the police station. Lucy won't get away with deceiving me like this, he muttered, but just steps away from the station, his vision went black, and he fainted. When Steve opened his eyes again, he found himself in a hospital room. I had been there, sitting beside him. I poured a glass of water and handed it to him. What are you doing here? Steve croaked, visibly surprised to see me. You fainted at the entrance of the police station, and the police called us to inform us, I explained calmly. Stanley had some urgent matters to attend to at the company. As you know, after drinking the water, Steve's throat felt much better. Thank you, he said, his voice still raspy. No need to thank me. I waved my hand nonchalantly. It was just a small favor. I sat back in the chair and watched him, a hint of amusement in my eyes. "What are your plans now?" I asked. At my question, Steve fell silent, not uttering a word. I understood and said, "If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. You're awake now, and my mission is complete. I'll leave." Just as I was about to turn to leave, Steve clenched his fists tighter and called out, "Wait, wait." Surprised, I turned around. Then, with a thud, Steve got off the bed and knelt directly in front of me. "What are you planning to do?" I asked knowingly, my voice calm yet expectant. I want to beg you. It was my fault before. I was blind. Please, as an adult, have mercy and help me," Steve pleaded, his voice sincere. Seeing this usually proud young master genuinely apologize to me was not an easy feat, and I couldn't help but feel a small sense of satisfaction. I nodded, a hint of amusement in my expression. "All right, really." Steve seemed taken aback by my quick agreement. I raised an eyebrow disapprovingly. "What's with that look? I have a kind heart. You know." With that, I reached into my bag and pulled out a piece of paper, handing it to Steve. "Here. This is the reason why your little girlfriend left." Steve eagerly took the paper from me, his eyes scanning it as he examined it closely, not willing to miss a single word. The truth on the page was harsh. Lucy was not as innocent and understanding as she had seemed. During high school, Lucy had already undergone an abortion and had become involved with a group of delinquents. Her focus had never been on her studies, which, of course, led to her failing to get into college. At such a young age, she had to start working, but she was lazy and refused to work hard. Barely earning any money, Lucy had set her sights on Steve, who often dined at the hotel, a young master with a strong ego, living a privileged life. Men like him were the easiest to deceive, and Lucy, it seemed, had succeeded. If it weren't for me showing up unexpectedly and disrupting her plans, she would have succeeded in her game. The child she was carrying wasn't even Steve's. It belonged to another delinquent. The child had been conceived months before she got together with Steve. Lucy had hoped to keep the secret until it was too late to reveal the truth. When she realized Steve was beginning to grow suspicious, she couldn't afford to let him find out, so she left. Steve's face crumpled as the truth hit him. He had truly loved Lucy, and now the painful reality of her deception was too much to bear. Tears streamed down his face as he knelt before me. Crying out in heartache, I shook my head, a sigh escaping my lips. "One should never let their heart rule when it comes to love," I muttered under my breath. The next day, Steve, despite his emotional breakdown, pulled himself together. The day before, he had been sobbing uncontrollably, but the following morning, he was back at work in a suit at Jones Corporation. This was, of course, part of the plan arranged by Stanley. However, when Steve walked into Jones Corporation, it wasn't as the assistant general manager anymore. Instead, he was now a low-level employee. Stanley had made it clear that nothing would come easily. "Don't expect anything without effort," Stanley had told him. "How can you prove your abilities without achieving something first?" Steve had no choice but to work his way up from the bottom. Despite his pride, Steve was a graduate of a prestigious university, and with time, he managed to navigate his way through the lower ranks fairly smoothly. After a few months, his demeanor had visibly changed. He was more stable, more composed. He handled both big and small matters with much more maturity. Stanley, who had zero tolerance for flaws, was impressed with his progress. Meanwhile, Lucy's life was taking a very different turn. After Steve was kicked out of the Jones family, she found herself in an even more precarious situation. Her former lover, Lee, who had always been involved in the underworld and had no stable job, had kept in touch with her. As soon as he learned that Steve had been ousted, he persuaded Lucy to leave him behind and run away with the money. Fearing that Steve would come looking for them, they fled to another city overnight. At first, they still had money to spend, and their relationship appeared to be harmonious, but Lucy, now 6 months pregnant, was already showing signs of morning sickness. She didn't have the same youthful beauty she once had, and Lee, though he didn't say it aloud, was beginning to feel disgusted. He took the money and went out to find other women behind Lucy's back, telling her that he was working hard to provide for her and the baby. Lucy wasn't a fool. She noticed the scent of perfume on his clothes every time he came back. "Are you seeing other women behind my back?" she asked coldly. Lee, clearly impatient, waved her off. "I'm busy with work. Stop thinking nonsense." "Nonsense?" Lucy's voice was icy. "The perfume on your clothes is so strong that I'm sure anyone could smell it. Don't lie to me." She stared at him, her eyes cold. "Let me tell you, Lee, we're both in this together. If you betray me, I'll make you regret it." Lee's face stiffened, but then he turned, pulling her into a tight hug, his eyes softening with fake affection. "Lucy, rest assured. I'll never betray you. I love you." Lucy, still believing his sweet words, placed her hand on her swollen belly with a smile. "I love you too. Our baby is already 6 months old. In a few more months, you'll be able to hold him. We'll be happy for the rest of our lives." "Yes," Lee said, his eyes filled with a deep affection that didn't quite reach his heart. I looked at the video the private detective had sent to my phone, unable to hold back a laugh. Is Lucy really this foolish? Or is she just blinded by love? I wondered aloud. She managed to play Steve like a fiddle, but she couldn't see that Lee was doing the same to her. Is this pregnancy brain, or just another case of being blinded by love? But in my opinion, Lucy didn't seem like the type to simply sit around and wait for fate to play out. It was only a matter of time before she realized what was happening. I sat back and watched as they tore each other apart. 2 months later, Lucy was caught red-handed in a hotel room with another woman. She was furious, having given up so much for Lee, and now this was how he repaid her. In her anger, she forgot that she was 8 months pregnant and got into a physical fight with the other woman. Naturally, Lee protected his new lover. Amidst the chaos, Lucy fell and went into premature labor. The baby was stillborn. It was a fully-formed male fetus, but due to the premature birth and excessive bleeding, Lucy's uterus couldn't hold on. She would never be able to conceive again. During all of this, Lee didn't even bother to visit Lucy. He was too busy with the other woman. He only expressed a hint of regret when he heard that it was a boy. As I was about to leave the hospital room, I heard someone call my name. Wait, Mom." I turned around, surprised. With a thud, Steve got off the bed and knelt directly in front of me. "What are you planning to do?" I asked knowingly. Sensing what was coming, I want to beg you. It was my fault before. I was blind. Please, as an adult, have mercy and help me." Steve pleaded sincerely. To have this usually proud young master genuinely apologize to me was not an easy feat. Feeling satisfied, I nodded. "All right," I said. Steve seemed taken aback by my quick agreement. I raised an eyebrow disapprovingly. "What's with that look? I have a kind heart, you know." Saying that, I took out a piece of paper from my bag and handed it to Steve. "Here, this is the reason why your little girlfriend left." Steve eagerly took it, examining it closely, unwilling to miss a single word. The paper revealed a shocking truth. Lucy was not as innocent and understanding as she appeared to be. During high school, Lucy had already gone through an abortion and later got involved with a few delinquents. Her focus was never on academics, which is why she didn't get into college. At such a young age, she had to start working. She wasn't willing to work honestly and earned only a small amount of money each day. Lucy set her sights on Steve, who often dined at the hotel, a young master with a strong ego, living a privileged life. Men like him were the easiest to deceive, and indeed, Lucy succeeded. If it weren't for me, who appeared unexpectedly and disrupted her plan, she would have succeeded. The child she was carrying was not Steve's, it belonged to another delinquent. A child conceived 2 months before she got together with Steve. The pregnancy had lasted about 5 or 6 months, and that's why she couldn't wait any longer and had to leave. If Steve had become suspicious and discovered the truth, she wouldn't have gained anything. "So, that's how it is," Steve muttered, tears streaming down his face. He truly loved Lucy. Watching him kneeling on the ground, crying his heart out, I shook my head. One should never let their heart rule in matters of love. The next day, Steve cried so miserably, but he quickly pulled himself together. The day before, he was sobbing uncontrollably, but by the next day, he put on a suit and went to work at Jones Corporation. This was, of course, arranged by Stanley. However, when Steve returned to Jones Corporation, he wasn't the assistant general manager anymore. Instead, he was a low-level employee. Stanley had told him, "Don't expect to gain anything without putting in any effort. How can you prove your abilities without achieving some results?" Steve, after all, was a graduate of a prestigious university, and he managed to navigate his way through the lower ranks quite smoothly. After spending a few months outside, his temperament visibly became more stable. He handled both big and small matters with ease. Stanley, who never tolerated any flaws, was also very satisfied with his progress. After Lucy left, her life didn't turn out as well as she had imagined. The small-time hoodlum, Lee, who had always been involved in the underworld and didn't have a stable job, had been secretly in contact with Lucy all along. After learning that Steve had been kicked out of the Jones family, Lee directly persuaded Lucy to leave Steve and run away with the money. Lucy did as he said, worried that Steve would come looking for them. The two of them flew overnight to another city. At first, they still had money to spend, and their relationship seemed harmonious. Lucy was already 6 months pregnant, and her pregnancy was starting to show, but due to morning sickness, she didn't have the same youthful beauty she once had. Lee didn't say it aloud, but he was disgusted. He took the money and went out to find other women behind Lucy's back. He even told her that he was going out to work and earn money for her and the baby. Lucy wasn't foolish. Every time Lee came back, there was the scent of perfume on his clothes. "Are you seeing other women behind my back?" Lucy asked, coldly. Lee impatiently waved her off. "I'm busy with work all day. I don't have time." "Stop thinking nonsense." "Am I thinking nonsense? The scent of perfume on your clothes is so strong that I'm afraid others won't smell it," Lucy said coldly. "Let me tell you, Lee. We're both in this situation together. If you dare betray me, I'll make you regret it." Before, Lee had used sweet words to coax her, but now, he was impatient. His face stiffened, and he turned to hug Lucy tightly, with deep affection in his eyes. "Lucy, rest assured, I will never betray you. I love you." Lucy didn't notice the flicker of disgust in Lee's eyes. She believed his lies and sweetly placed his hand on her belly. "I love you too. Our baby is already 6 months old. In a few more months, you'll be able to see him. We'll be happy for a lifetime." "Yes, we'll be happy for a lifetime." Lee's eyes were filled with deep affection. I looked at the video the private detective had sent to my phone, unable to suppress a laugh. Was Lucy really that foolish? Or was she playing her cards so cleverly that she couldn't see how Lee was doing the same to her? Could this be what they call pregnancy brain? Or was she simply blinded by love? But in my opinion, Lucy didn't seem like someone who would just sit around and let fate take its course. Now, it was only a matter of time before I sat back and watched them tear each other apart. 2 months later, Lucy was caught red-handed in a hotel room with another woman. Lucy was furious. She had given up so much for Lee, and this was how he repaid her. In her anger, she forgot that she was 8 months pregnant and got into a physical fight with the other woman. Naturally, Lee jumped in to protect his new lover. Amidst the chaos, Lucy fell, and in the process, she went into premature labor. The baby, a fully formed male fetus, was stillborn. Due to the premature birth and excessive bleeding, Lucy's uterus couldn't hold on, and she would never be able to conceive again. During this time, Lee didn't even bother to visit Lucy. He was too busy with the other woman, and he only expressed a hint of regret when he heard that it was a boy. Lucy, completely devastated, was left to cope alone. She couldn't even make a sound as the reality of everything set in. Just as we were lost in our own world, we heard a sweet voice. "I want a kiss," it said. I looked down and realized it was our little baby. Both Stanley and I blushed, embarrassed. Our daughter, not understanding the situation, raised her little hand, asking for a hug. Stanley picked up our little bundle of joy, and without saying a word, we exchanged a glance. Then, together, we planted 2 soft kisses on our daughter's cheeks, overwhelmed with love and tenderness. Thank you for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below, so feel free to share your opinions. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more great stories. We'll see you in the next video.